Hey everybody, welcome again to the ShopNotes Podcast. It's episode number 215, a special Thanksgiving edition. And sweet potato is my favorite vegetable around this time of year. We're going to answer some listener questions and talk about what's going on here at Woodsmith ShopNotes Popular Woodworking. Today's episode is brought to you by Epilogue Laser. You can quickly and easily customize your woodworking projects for added beauty and value. Learn more at epiloguelaser.com. It's also cold and flu season, and I've been fighting one the last, almost a week now.
So you sound stuffy. Yep.
It's my new thing that I'm going for.
Yeah. I started getting a little blocked up. We did a Sunday evening turning in my shop. My buddy came over and we did a few like giant platters, like cookie platters.
Ooh, cool.
And after we were done, I woke up Monday morning. I'm like, why am I like everything is like slimy. So I'm hoping
from the
it
wood
was
dust
not.
or
That's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping it was from like because there was a lot of dust flying around here.
All right.
So
have you been still doing that pretty frequently? I haven't heard you talk about it in a while.
what, turning?
Yeah, the Sunday turning.
No, we haven't in a while. Actually, my buddy's like, "Hey, we need to keep doing this, like because that's what we were doing. We would do like a Sunday evening turning, like from 6 o'clock till like 2 in the morning. I haven't done it in a while. So I told my buddy Greg, I was like, "Yeah, come on over, man. I'll have you turn. Like I'll dink around the shop doing stuff that just needs done."
Sure.
But then he showed up with these 2 giant platter blanks that I forgot him and I cut probably 2 years ago. And I'm like, boy, those are really figured maple. Like, let's do that. So we had both legs going. It was pretty awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Last episode, we were talking about double power tools, which I did not get the kind of traction in terms of feedback and comments that I thought I was going to.
Okay.
But what do you do? We were also talking about shop heat.
Yep.
Because it was starting to get cold. And it's actually, I think this morning was the coldest morning so far this season.
Sure was.
So S. Zimmerman says, shop heat. I'm in northern Minnesota and heat my 1,000 square foot garage / wood shop with slab heat fired by an electric water heater. I keep it around 60 to 65. It's expensive when temps get below 0. Once I turn it on in the late fall, it stays on till late spring. The nice benefit is my lumber, generally air dried to 12, dries down to 6 to 8% in a few weeks. So it's like a whole shop dehumidification kiln.
Basically. Yeah. That's kind of what I'm hearing.
Yeah. Routers. Bosch just released their 18-volt router. It's compatible with Colt accessories. I don't need it. Got a good sale price on it at Acme Tool with a free battery and charger. Couldn't pass it up. Really enjoy the show. There you go. Because we were wondering whether Bosch had a cordless router out there, and the answer seems to be yes. Kevin Thomas writes, as for heat, I've had my shop for almost 20 years now, and I still haven't insulated the walls. Oops. So I have 2 small space heaters. If it gets too cold, I'll go to the Kansas City Woodworkers Guild and use the shop there. As for second tools for the shop, I'd like to have the setup that Mike Farrington has with the 2 side-by-side table saws.
Which he got from us.
Right. I have 1 router table and about 6 or 7 routers. They seem to multiply. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see that. Sean Allard says, how did I miss the meat Rolodex from last week's show? Now I want some bacon. Bacon is always a good idea.
Yep.
Driftless Joinery says, one thing I do every time I go in the shop is I take a piece of cherry over to the table saw and I cut it really slow so it burns and it smells, and my shop smells great. Okay.
I mean, I feel like an air freshener would be better, but like,
right. Which makes me wonder,
they
like,
make burnt cherry smell.
Yeah. Could you take a plug-in air freshener, and then once it all burns out, just put like a couple of like wood shavings in there, and then that as that heats up, it would be like a
Fire hazard.
If you say it like that, yes.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that for all the essential oil folk out there, there are not nearly enough wood flavored essential oils.
Sandalwood, cedarwood, cypress, pine. I mean, obviously pine. There's like 4.
But there's really, I haven't seen pine as an essential oil.
My wife has one. It's called Pine Forest. Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
All right. Feed the Chunk 9836 says, technical note, Logan needs compression on his mic. He keeps peaking and his sound is clipping.
That's probably a good thing.
Yeah. So, what is your microphone? I wonder. Sometimes I wonder if
Blue Ball, a Yeti Blue Ball.
Okay. Sometimes I wonder if it's the internet connections that we have that flake on us sometimes, or if it really is.
I turned my mic down this episode just from that comment.
Oh,
so
all right.
Yeah. So we'll see.
All right, there you go.
Yeah, I got one from email from Mark
did? Okay.
Haas. Yep, multiples in the shop. This I think was forwarded to me because of the first comment. This is not trolling Logan. Like, I don't know if he's saying like, Logan, this is not trolling, or this is not him trolling me. I'm kind of taking it like that. I would like to add a second ShopSmith Mark V to my shop.
Oh,
it can be used to supplement many other tools: table saw, sander, limited router, etc. I thoroughly enjoy the podcast series for the way you guys bat ideas off each other. Regards, Mark.
I could see that, because if you could find a used ShopSmith, and depending on the accessories, that could be a secondary tool.
Yeah, but like, let's take that a step further, or 2 steps further, and you have 4 ShopSmiths, and then you could set one up as a lathe, one up as a drill press, one up as a table saw. You see where I'm going with this?
Yes,
Mark?
I do. Because I think we've mentioned this before, like Becky's dad, Ted, formerly creative director here at Woodsmith, has a ShopSmith set up as a lathe, and I think his was primarily used as a disc sander.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a disc sander that doubles as a lathe.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, have you ever used a disc sander or a lathe as a disc sander?
No.
Okay.
I know a lot of people do.
Right.
I feel like Woodsmith actually had a plan to build a disc sander with platform. Like,
yeah, I don't remember.
One or something.
There was an old ShopNotes one, and I don't remember if there was a new version of it. Let's see if I can find that.
I haven't. I watch, you know what I do think is super valuable, and I watch Richard Raffin do it all the time, is putting a Jacob's chuck in the headstock with one of the 3 or 4 inch sanding pads for turning, and put that in there, and then use that kind of as a soft disc sander.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? So like when he does his spatulas, that's kind of how he sands them. I think he has like an MDF disc as well that he puts on the headstock and uses that, but like then to kind of sand the curves and, you know, kind of flare everything out and stuff. He uses one of those. I got 3 lathes. I could set one up as a disc sander, but that's like encroaching upon like ShopSmith territory. We're not don't have time for that here.
Right. I mean, I can see that. I'm just trying to think, like, there are folk that have a lathe that probably don't use it as often as a lathe.
Yeah,
Whereas if
but
you
they
had
use
it
it a
as a
lot
disc,
more as a sander. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, and honestly, like those have to be real big. You know what I have wanted for a long time, and I know this is about that size. Some of the luthier supply shops carry, and I don't know the brand, but it's like a hand crank disc sander, and it's really small.
oh
It's
yeah,
expensive. It's like super precision. Like it's expensive.
yeah,
And I was thinking, oh yeah, like if you had a like a midi lathe or a little like I don't know, little Rikon or like the little Nova or something that you kind of like a benchtop lathe, that'd be the perfect thing. Like set that thing up like that and just let it be a disc sander. And that'd be about the same size as that. And if you build it out of MDF, it stays pretty flat.
right,
Shouldn't be an issue.
yeah. All right.
Yeah. I have seen a lot of guys use them. Actually, I was just looking at a copy of one of the Shaker books that Fine Woodworking produced. Oh God, probably in the 90s. And there's a picture of a young Chris Bexford in there using his lathe as a drum sander, like not like a thickness sander, but like as a drum to like shape the inside of like a curved Shaker leg.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
All right.
kind of as like a horizontal spindle sander, basically.
Right. Yeah. I think I've seen something similar to that. Sometimes they have them as like the inflatable little squishy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of goes along the same lines as having like the buffing system for mounting on your lathe.
Yeah. Yeah. Like the Beal system or something.
Right.
Talking about sanding and lathes, my little Sunday night, which I was like, oh yeah, Greg, come over at 6:00. We'll be done by 11:00, midnight, something like that. 2 a.m. I walk inside. I think it says a lot about your sandpaper consumption. Says a lot about how good of a turner you are and how bad of a turner you are.
Okay.
I will tell you, my 100 grit, which is the coarsest grit I have, I'm out. Like, dang it. Shoot. So, and actually that leads to a question I have is like, when you buy sandpaper, theoretically you should consume sandpaper at the same rate every grit, right? So like if you're sanding a project, you're starting at, let's call it 100 grit and ending at 240.
Sure.
You should consume 100, 150, 180, and 240 a sheet at a time, right?
I guess I wouldn't think that way. I would think that I would consume the lower grits, the 100, 120 a lot more than I would the other ones. Okay. Because I feel like you would be doing most of your sanding with the low grit.
Okay.
But see, I'm looking at it as from like a furniture making perspective where I'm removing blade marks or.
Well, and that's where I'm going. I need to order. I have a lot of boxes of half empty sandpaper here. I need to order some 6-inch discs for myself.
Right.
Because I have 0 coarse grits. Like everything I have starts at like 180, which I'm like, sometimes that's just not coarse enough. For what I'm doing. Like if I'm trying to knock down, high spots or whatever. So it's like, do I order a box and try to get all my sandpaper on the same rotation, or do I just restock the grits that are getting low? That's the question. Is it's like, I guess there's, with Amazon, I guess you're not paying shipping. That was the big thing. It's like, okay, if I go ahead and go to like Lee Valley or Rockler and order, or Merca and order these grits, I'm paying shipping anyways. So do I stock up on everything and spread the shipping out over 5 different boxes, or do I like pay the one shipping cost to get one box, which seems silly? But
yeah, no, in that sense, I would probably just do a stock up, or do like a
double up on those grits that I use a lot.
Right, like 2 100s and then one of the other ones or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, because there have been a couple of projects where I've wanted like as coarse of grit as I could get.
Yeah.
The last one was my parents' table. I don't remember why. I mean, there was a lot of epoxy on that, so I think I was trying to probably sand down some epoxy or some bridges of epoxy or whatever. So I'm like, I need like 36 grit. Like, if you could just take 1-inch roadstone and glue it to sandpaper, that's what I want right now. And so like, I'll just drive into Menards and grab it, or Lowe's. I say both those because Menards does not have 6-inch sandpaper.
Oh, at all?
No, they have 5.
Okay. Well, I mean, that sort of makes sense.
Yeah, and Lowe's is the same way. I'm like, oh, crap. I did not consider that when I bought. I mean, I bought my Merca secondhand, so, like, it was kind of just, it is what it is. But that's a consideration. Like, 6-inch paper is a whole lot harder to get. Like, you have to order it online. You can't just drive to the store and pick some up. I could probably go to, like, Acme or the Woodsmith store and get some. Right. But, like, if you don't have something close to you other than a Lowe's or a Home Depot or a Menards or whatever, like,
yeah,
you can't buy 6-inch there, which I had not considered.
Yeah. I would think you'd be able to get 6-inch at maybe like an auto parts store, but then I think you're not going to get anything coarse there.
No, you're going to get a lot of like 800,000, like automotive type sandpaper. That's true. But which I discovered, I have 2 boxes of 800 and 2 boxes of 1,000. Okay. Like, why? I don't know why. Like, I don't remember buying them. Yeah. Yeah. Like, maybe it was one of those, like, I was using it for some epoxy turning or something. God, I hate doing that, though. Like, I don't think I would have, like, set myself up to do any more than I needed to.
Right.
But
we did those martini glasses. Was it in that?
No, I don't think so. I don't know. It's just odd.
Right.
And it's like nice. It's like the nice Merca Iridium stuff. It's like,
oh, wow.
I paid way more for those boxes than I should have. And I don't know why I have them.
Okay. But. So what on your Merca, because you have the, what do they call it? The Daros or whatever.
The Daros 6. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you use the AbraNet stuff then, or do you use regular discs?
I have, but most of my stuff is the Merca Gold stuff, the non-AbraNet. The one I wanted to try, and I keep hearing a lot about it. Our friend Stumpy Nibs, Jim, although I think he has a partnership with 3M, so you got to take that for what it's worth. Their Cubitron stuff is supposed to be really good.
Okay.
The 3M, I think it's called Cubitron. It's a ceramic grit. So the grit is ceramic medium, and it as it breaks down, that media like fractures, so it doesn't round off. So like a garnet rounds off. This doesn't round off. It fractures, and you actually are getting like fresh cutting edges as you're using it, which is an interesting concept. And I've heard it's expensive. I have not been able to find somewhere to order it from yet. That seemed like it was a legit website. It seemed like a lot of them were like, cartrunksandpaper.com. It's like, oh, I probably don't want to order sandpaper from there.
Yeah. I have a bunch of discs for my 5-inch that I think are just regular sandpaper. And we use the AbraNet stuff here on the studio set, and it works pretty well. I question its durability in the lower grits.
Yes. Yeah. I think this is my opinion, like, and I'm not a physicist, right? But like the physics don't make sense, right? Like it logically, it does not last as long because you have 50% less area that's doing the cutting,
right?
Because you have holes all over it, So like theoretically, I would, I think it's pretty logical to say all the media that is on the AbraNet stuff is doing all the cutting. If you put a full standard sandpaper on there, you're spreading the cutting out over a lot more grit. So I don't know. Like, I think it's better for dust collection. Obviously, you're not dinking around lining up holes and stuff.
Right, and the paper isn't clogging.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I sometimes when I'm sanding with it, it just feels like the edges of the Abranet discs start to fray pretty quickly.
They do. Yeah.
Especially if you're doing something where, like it's a frame and panel assembly.
Yeah. Where you're bumping the edges.
Yeah.
Yep. Which, I guess at the end of the day, I want to say that philosophically you should be sanding that before you assemble it so you don't have to sand the inside. But because how many times have you been sanding something and you run the sander into the edge of a frame and panel assembly and you make a line on the inside of it?
Oh, yeah.
So like yes, but I agree. Like even I feel like I've used some of the Abra because they make Abranet discs for turning. Same thing. It feels like those edges start to fray. Once they're ripped, they're shot.
Yeah.
So
because then it starts catching even more.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So, but no, I think the Cubitron stuff's supposed to be really nice. Maybe because I need to refresh some sandpaper anyways. I'll order that. The problem is I have like so many boxes of like half empty sandpaper. What I need to do is I need to condense them all. And Rockler sells a drawer system for sandpaper. It sounds so stupid, but it's just like one of those like little like quality of life things. Cause all my sanding stuff is on a dust extractor. And they're just piled and you can't roll around the shop without losing, boxes of sandpaper off the edge. So
right.
It's like, oh God, it would actually be really nice to have a little drawer system, but supposedly they're coming out with a 6-inch drawer system. They don't have it yet, but
okay.
Yeah. Those shop luxuries, things you don't really need to spend your money on, but you still do.
Right. Which, I just got done writing an article for ShopNotes on something very similar because I feel like there's a category, sort of, maybe several categories of things that people don't always consider well enough when setting up their shop space for storage.
Yeah.
And the article I wrote was about hardware storage. Because I think you're really focused in your shop on tools. What's the floor plan? Where's the workbench going to go? Clamp storage probably next, and maybe lumber storage after that. But then you get into things like hardware storage or jigs and fixtures.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, where do those go? I don't know. Wherever they fit.
Yeah.
Today's episode is brought to you by Epilogue Laser. You can quickly and easily customize your woodworking projects for added beauty and value. Learn more at epiloguelaser.com.
Yeah. And lumber storage is one thing. I think I've talked about that I didn't really plan out here. Should have planned it out a lot better, but it didn't. That's okay. That's why my storage area over there looks like a freaking hurricane relief zone, I did see when I was down at Shea Alexander's shop in Virginia, I might have said this. He has a bunch of like jigs for certain products he makes regularly, some of which are like chairs, some of which are stools, some are boxes, but he has all these jigs made and he has them so nicely organized on a French cleat system. It's like the jig itself has a hook cut out of it so he could just pop it up there. I'm like, oh, that's a really good idea.
Yeah.
So it's like, I wonder if I could, because I have a bunch of templates. I have some bending jigs. I got a bunch of templates. It's like, I wonder if I could like figure out a way to get those to all hang up somewhere where it's like you get them. Like the problem is I don't want to hang them 12 feet in the air where I got to drag a ladder around.
Right.
That's the biggest thing is I don't want to have to get up there with a ladder to get them. So
yeah. Well, and a lot of those things are too big for a drawer.
Yes.
Or if they do fit in in a drawer, it's like that's the only thing that's in this gigantic drawer.
Yep.
Because like right behind you, you got those bench hooks. Yeah. And I have a shooting board that I made from a ShopNotes project that is long, and it doesn't really have a cleat on it. The cleat on it runs the length of it because it's designed to be clamped into a face vise.
Yeah.
So it's like, where do I put that? Or you have like a mortising jig for a router. It's like, it should go on a shelf, but I'd really like to use that shelf for wood storage and not that. And you just get 3 or 4 of those things, and it's now what?
Yeah, my problem is along these same lines is table saw sleds. Like I have, I think, 3 different table saw sleds. I have an infinity one. I have one that we made on video, the bat shaped one, the bat signal, or that Batman logo shaped one. And then I have a woodpecker's. Theirs isn't really a sled, but it's like their angle cutting sled and stuff.
Sure.
It's like, man, I almost need a file to stand those up in, like underneath the table saw. You know what I mean? Because that's about the only way to store them. The only way that makes sense. So, yeah.
Yeah, so it's all those kind of things where you just don't know. And then they become clutter in the sense that you end up just moving them from one horizontal surface to the next.
Yep.
Because you need something. So,
Yep. I had actually, I was going to have one of our former Woodsmith designers, Ken Munkle. He's since decided he doesn't want to take any extra work, which is unfortunate. But I was going to have him start working on the design for a outfeed table for me for the shop here. That's smaller than what I have currently set up, which is just a big Craig table and stuff. But we had talked about having like a file system in there for like miter gauges, because I found myself with like 4 different miter gauges, and like they're really nice to have multiple miter gauges. One of them is an exact 90 from Woodpecker, so it's always at 9. That's all it does. It does one thing really well.
Right.
Then I got others that are nicer that I can set really accurate for angles and stuff. It's like, okay, that type of, like, right now they're literally laying on the floor next to and in front of the table saw. So it's like, oh man, it's all of these little peripheral type storage things that I like to see when I go to other people's shops. Like, oh, hey, this is how they're storing these things,
right?
Because we all have the same problems with storing them.
Yeah, because I mean, some of that stuff would be nice to hang on a wall, but wall space isn't as plentiful as somebody would think in a shop.
No.
Unless, like you're saying, you're going 12 feet up in the air, and then you got this like library ladder that you have to roll around. And
yeah. Which, I mean, but then it's an efficiency thing. Like, do you really want to be walking up a ladder? Like, even if you have stairs, even if you have a second story in your shop, like, do you really want to be going upstairs to get your other miter gauge when you need it? Because and then silly.
Would you?
Yeah, would you really? Oh.
All right, so that's one of the questions for today that I'd like to hear from listeners on is, what are the things in your shop that stump you for storage? Storage stumpers. And maybe you're a green woodworker and it actually is stumps that you're trying to store.
Yeah. Put casters on them.
Yeah. So
I discovered one of the things I need to figure out how to do. So this big Oliver pattern maker's lathe that I have, up and running, functional, no problem. It is from a time where stuff was built really big and really overly designed.
Right.
Like, doesn't hold a candle to today's lathes don't hold a candle to this, like, from a quality construction. On that note, the spindle on it is huge. Like,
oh yeah,
the actual threads on it. So a standard spindle for a lathe is 1.25 inches by 6 or 8. Usually it's 6, and then the smaller one are 1 inch by 8 for the thread size. So your chuck screws onto those. And inside of those spindle threads, you have a taper. Most lathes today are a MT2, a Morse taper 2. Some of them are Morse taper 1s, but most of them are 2s. This Oliver Pattern Maker's lathe, the threads, I don't remember what size they are on there, but I think they're like 1 7/8 inches by 4.
Whoa.
I mean, like, yeah, like it looks like you should be putting a tire on this thing. Like, it's huge. And obviously, like this is a thread that nobody uses anymore. So getting a thread adapter, there is a company that makes them. I think they're down in Texas. Let me back up. I have one thread adapter. So I have an adapter that will adapt that thread down to the smaller size, which is 1 inch by 8 or 1 inch by 6, whichever. I don't remember the thread count. I need one that holds my very small chuck, but this is a huge lathe. Like, that's like, it's ridiculous putting this tiny little chuck on that lathe. Like, I can't hold anything I want to. So when we were doing these like cookie platters the other day, we wanted flat surfaces. So think of like a round tabletop that has a rim around the edge. That's exactly what these things were.
Okay.
Really hard to turn a flat surface. It is very hard. You end up chasing yourself. Like, you know, like you end up with a top that's really wavy. So I was like, oh God, if we could mount this on that lathe, we should use the compound, feed a tool right across it. Perfectly flat surface. This is going to be lovely. Well, I don't have a way to hold my chuck on there. So I have to figure out, like, there's a company in Texas that will make an adapter, but it's like $400 for this adapter.
Whoa.
And that seems really expensive for what that is. I mean, like, I think that the machine time is probably well worth that.
Right.
But it's like
worth it in the sense of how much use you would actually get out of it based on its cost. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, could I come up with a drawbar system where I like go to a local machine shop and say, hey, because this has a Morse taper 4. So a standard drive spur is like that long. This drive spur is like that long, and it's geez. It's like the fattest carrot you'd find out of a bag of carrots from the grocery store. That's kind of what this taper is like. And it's like, I wonder if I could like come up with have a local machine shop, or just buy a metal lathe and turn one, a drawbar that would fit into that Morse taper that I could run through the tailstock with a piece of all thread and just drawbar it in there.
Oh, yeah.
But it's one of those things. It's like one of those things. It's like, man, like, it's really like, there are certain tools, I think, and I feel like we've talked about this before. There are certain tools that need certain things to really get the most out of them. And this is a good example of, with this lathe, you need that big chuck to really get the most out of it.
Yeah, I can see that.
And it's like, like a little router, or a handheld router. You really need both collets to get the most out of it, right? Like a 1/4 inch will do a lot, but if you want big profiles, you can't do a 1/4 inch collet on those.
No.
So when did we talk about this? I feel like we talked about, like a lathe and a bandsaw. Those two kind of go together.
Yeah.
Right.
So, right. The dynamic duos of certain, whether a tool needs another tool to perform its best or another accessory.
Yeah.
I feel the same way, which took me a long time to get to this point, about like a handheld router and a plunge base.
Oh, yeah. Oh, 100%. Yes.
Because most of my woodworking when I was growing up, like, I did it all with a fixed base, and just felt like the plunge base was an unnecessary add-on. And then you start using a plunge base, and it's like, oh, that's why you'd have a plunge base. Yeah. And then now it's like, I don't know why I put the fixed base on there.
I know. Oh, exactly. Yeah. It's like, why would you ever put a fixed base on? That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
No, I know. And it kind of falls that way with some tools as well. I've had a class here the last couple of weeks working on these little mantle boxes. And one of the guys from the class, Ted, He came out on Saturday to finish up his box. And we were just kind of talking about, just kind of, he was all done. We were kind of BSing about shops and stuff. And he's like, hey, I got I don't know what he said, like a Craftsman table saw. He had an old brand of the like Menards version of a bandsaw. He's like,
Okay.
boy, he's like using like the Harvey bandsaw you have in here. He's like, that's different. He's like, that's just different.
Right.
And it's those types of things where it's like, once you have used the nice stuff, I'm putting nice stuff in once you've used it to the point where you realize where the benefits are, there are certain things that would be hard to go without. I had to, what was it? Oh, when I was routing the top to that little Norwegian linen chest, I had an auxiliary base that matched the inside curve of that. And it only fit on my Bosch Colt fixed base, because I have a plunge base for my Colt,
Sure.
Which is on there most of the time, but it only fit on my fixed base. And I'm like, I gotta plunge this straight bit into this curved lid with this fixed base. Like, what am I, living in the 1970s here? Like, I mean, and you can do it, and it doesn't like, and that's part of that's part of woodworking, is like understanding how you can accomplish a task with the tools you have.
Right.
But yeah, it's interesting. But it's like, man, to really, as a video gamer, it's like, oh, I could like really level up my lathe by adding an accessory, Wizard Hat's +5 intelligence. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
I thought about this the other day as we were absolutely making way more sawdust in this shop than we needed to on a Sunday night. Do you have a hanging dust filter in your shop?
No, I don't.
Do you see any benefit of having one?
I do.
Okay.
Because there have been, and everything is all connected.
Okay.
This is like Loki. All the timelines are intertwined.
Okay.
But so my shop, back of the garage, as I've discussed before, routinely.
Yep.
I don't have a lot of space. One of the things that I don't have space for is a full-on dust collector. So I have the Fine Turbo 2 shop vac as my primary dust and chip removal tool. It's what I have space for. It does a decent job with pretty much everything that I can attach it to. However, there are some tools that will make dust no matter what.
Yep.
And I put a handheld router in that category. Bandsaw does okay, but I feel like, because the bandsaw I have is a Delta 14-inch, which they were designed with just some kind of a, generic below the blade kind of hookup.
Yeah.
And that works okay, but you have to kind of have it just right. And not necessarily with a shop vac. But like a drill press, if you're sanding on a drill press or something like that, there's just nothing you can do. And I've noticed a number of times after, like the day after a woodworking session, that the cars in the garage kind of have a haze of dust on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
With all of those little notes in play, I can see where a hanging dust filter, or like we did that roll around one that Chris designed, having that in my shop would be a good way to take care of some of that. And fully knowing all the folk like at Oneida and other places, which is not a slam on them. They have their strategy. Like if it's in the air already, it's already a hazard. I get it.
Yeah.
But if I fit my shop out for dust collection, I can't do any woodworking in it.
Sure. Yeah. And I asked that because again, there's now a white layer of maple dust all over everything in the shop. And I have a hanging dust collector or a hanging air cleaner in the basement shop that I should pick up. I should like climb my butt up on a ladder, get it down, bring it in here, climb my butt back up on a ladder to hang it back up. Like, I should do that. To be clear, yeah, the dust collection best practices from a lot of these, high end, like highly educated dust collection companies say that those hanging dust collectors move the dust around and keep it airborne longer than it needs to be.
Yeah.
And I get that. I get that. And the logic sound, I feel like, Spock, like the logic sound. But there are some times where I really wish I had it. And we talked about I talked about putting a whole house fan in here and then just cracking the windows open and turning it on, letting it suck all the air up and into the attic, which would be sweet. But I say like they don't like them. I should bring that one in. The one I have downstairs, I think, is actually it's a General International. It's actually a infrared sensor one, so it turns itself on if it sees particulate in the air.
Okay.
What I really like, and it's kind of a pain in the butt with where I have my two lathes that I turn on most of the time. It would be kind of a pain in the butt to set up, but they use Oneida makes and sells, and I have one of theirs. These little bench top filter fan type things.
Oh yeah.
I don't remember what they call them, but they work so freaking well for turning. Like, you can just turning the lathe is one of those things, like, dust just gets all over. Like, you can't collect it. Like, not even dust, just chips and shavings. Like, you can do what you can to contain them, but they still find their way, like, in your mouth and everywhere.
Right.
So like I'm interested how many people actually use those hanging dust filters. Do they turn them on? Because when we clean the shop down there where you're at, Phil, like, they're always just packed with dust.
Right.
And that's dust that would have settled somewhere else. But I don't know. I don't know how to feel about it. Like, I get the logic from Oneida, but a lot of people use them.
Yeah. And I know that in the last few years, let's call it like 6 or 7, Mark and Steve have been using, and Dana, before that, have been using the ceiling ones a lot more than we used to before that.
Sure.
So it does seem like it makes a difference, but I mean, it also goes into the fact that I try to use a dust mask more often now too.
Yeah. If I'm in my shop and I am sanding turnings, I don't do it if I'm sanding regular stuff, because I'm hooked up to a dust extractor and it does a really nice job with the Merca sander. Right. But like, if I'm sanding at the lathe, I have these Max air filtration helmets.
Okay.
And I use those, and those are fantastic.
Oh, all right.
Like, I will actually, depending on what I'm turning, I will actually put those on if I'm turning something that's nasty. Like, turning anything spalted, putting one on, because I know that there's a lot of mold in there, and I don't want to deal with that,
Right. Well, we have Chris got everybody who works in the shop here a pair of masks, one with cartridge. They're both of them are 3M masks that have cartridges, one for organic vapors, like for finishing, for being in the spray booth, and then one with particulate filters on it for sanding and stuff like that. And I will say that, having been the kind of person that just had used disposable, more or less paper masks, having that soft, I don't know, respirator style mask makes a huge difference for me in comfort. Yeah.
Until it's 95 degrees out and you got lip sweat that you didn't know was possible.
That is fair. I will give you that.
Yeah.
But
I have there's red spread I'm looking at on the wall. You can't see it. It's over on the wall. I have a cartridge. Again, one of the 3M ones that I use for spraying stuff. If I spray stuff, I even spraying outside, I use it.
yeah,
Do I use it all the time? No. Like I was just, we were talking before we started recording. I was using some Weldwood contact cement, and you said, "Oh, is that the water-based stuff?" And I said, "Nope, it's full ethanol." Like, it's stinky, and I don't use a respirator like I probably should, and it probably tells me to use a respirator for it. But I don't. But if I'm spraying something and I know there's something particulate that's getting atomized through a spray gun, yep.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I've tried to do that even now with, just rattle can spraying in the spray booth with the vent fan on, still putting the mask on, and which is going to kind of sound like one of those things where there's a bunch of people out there that I know are already going like, duh, yeah. But it's not as obvious as you think.
Well, no, and it's like, oh, I'm fine. Like I'm in the spray booth for 4 seconds spraying spray paint. Like,
right.
What does that hurt?
Yeah, and the fan's on.
Yeah. So, yeah. I even spraying, like, honestly the worst, and what made me really start doing it was spraying the paint in here for the walls and stuff. I have a airless sprayer, so it's a nice commercial sprayer. And I left, and like I'm just white all over. I'm like, boy, how much of that did I breathe in? And I was talking to my one buddy that he does like commercial painting for like big buildings and stuff. And he's like, yeah. He's like, man, I always have my respirator on as he's smoking a cigarette. I'm like, dummy. Like, I hope you realize how ironic that is, Jim. Jeez.
Yeah. There's no way I want all those particles catching fire inside of me.
Yeah. Oh, funny.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
All right. There we go. Do you use ceiling mounted or roll around or bench top dust air filter system in your shop? Do you have one? Do you have an interest in it? Logan and I would like to know about that. We'll talk about it next time based on the comments that you can leave on our YouTube channel where you can watch us, or you can just email us directly, woodsmith@woodsmith.com. Put in there in the message line that it's for the ShopNotes podcast. Also, going back to the other earlier question is what are the storage stumpers in your shop that you have either through negligence or just accumulation, they're tough to find a home for and end up just kicking around. One last thing, I'm thankful for all the listeners out there and the people who comment on the podcast. It's what makes this fun for us to do every week. So happy Thanksgiving, everybody, and we'll catch you next month. Bye.